Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
Today, I have the honor of talking with Paul Markowski, who is the CEO at the American Association of Clinical Endocrinology. We've worked with Paul for a number of years, and he has led two medical associations through significant growth. So I'm really excited today to have a short time to talk to Paul about his thoughts on the future of associations. So thanks so much for joining me today, Paul.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And right before the weekend, it's a perfect time to get some of our thoughts out.
Fantastic. So Paul, I was just, wondering, how has the pandemic experience changed your thoughts about the future of the association industry?
Well, I think what's really interesting is I don't know if it's changed at least my thoughts or some people that I know, my peers' thoughts. I think what the pandemic has really done is kind of highlighted for us that some of the things that we were thinking about and places we felt organizations needed to go in the near future and long-term future, we can no longer just sit around and talk about them anymore. I think we have to put them into place. And so the quote, the excuses of kicking a can down the road on some of these issues because of maybe some of the politics behind our organizations can no longer really be those things that prevent us from having those kind of conversations anymore. I also think we have an opportunity because as association professionals, and I believe this, that even though we don't sense it all the time, I think our leaderships and our boards understand that we come with an expertise just like they do from what their profession is, and they are almost really forced now to trust us more than ever because of the uncertainty they see in trying to run an organization from the board's perspective. So for me, it gives us a little more of an advantage to impress upon them that now's the time to, I don't want to say take calculated risk, but to really look at investing into what that future is rather than trying to paddle the water and survive and think we're going to go back to a normal that we once had, because that normal's gone. And anybody who thinks that you're going to go back to doing business the way you were doing business, I think you're in for a challenge. But that's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. As we recently did that survey, and there's a lot of associations out there that are just waiting to go back to normal. And as you said, I think that is long gone, and we need to really be thinking of the future and what those investments and what changes that we need to be making. So with that what do you see are the next kind of challenges or disruptions for the industry?
Well, I think, everybody's been working hard, at least over the last decade, about transforming their professional associations and diversifying their business lines, right? And using technology platforms to help them collect the data and understand where they're going. I think it's safe to say that most associations still probably aren't there yet. They're not strictly comfortable with looking at business lines that are going to be very different than what they had in the past, which was basically meetings, selling some content maybe, and relying on dues. Well, I think this pandemic and the change right now in the economy has really indicated that people are watching their dollars, right? They're watching their income. Some have dropped in compensation, depending upon their profession, and so there's fewer and fewer and less discretionary dollars to be spent. So I think the importance of diversification of your business lines and creating those a la carte, I call them, opportunities outside of somebody getting something for being a member is even going to be more important going forward. I think that's where the greatest challenge and pressure is coming from right now, is that business development stream that you need to have. And I don't think it's just in the United States we're experiencing that. I've been hearing, and I know some of my peers have heard, is that's a pressure that's also coming from the international community, and maybe even more so as their dollars and equivalents to the US dollar have fluctuated greatly in a lot of these countries. Their ability to spend, or maybe their ability to get industry partners to support their activities through a U.S. association, professional association like ours, is even becoming more and more challenging.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you see are opportunities coming out of this?
Well, I think, we talk about, I was laughing as I was talking to a couple of my peers, and actually I'm interviewing for a position right now, but the collaboration always seems to be the buzzword, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's a great word. The problem is, I think organizations always tended to force those collaborations, force those partnerships. And the minute you do that, it becomes very unnatural and actually becomes more of a hindrance than an opportunity. And so I think it's going to be critical for most associations to really refine their priorities, their vision and mission, and being very strategic in what they do. Be committed to it and passionate about it. I think once you do that, those that really want to collaborate with you are going to come to the forefront. They're going to either touch base with you, or you're going to sense they're doing something in the same space with the same commitment and passion, and that you can, knock on a door, pick up the phone, and say, hey, would you want to do something together? And then it's a little more organic. I just get really frustrated over my years of forced collaboration because we always end up unhappy with the end product.
Right.
Not that it didn't make money, but that it really didn't accomplish everything we wanted to accomplish. And either two or three partners who are involved will walk away dissatisfied. And then that defeats the purpose of possibly coming together on things that really would work and be important. So I think that's really where the opportunity is. I think as people focus in on what they're doing and show a real passion for it, I think you're going to see a lot of people moving quickly to groups and areas of interest that kind of like that whole social media impact, right? You're going to find a group that resonates with you, and you're going to be with them until they don't. Then you might find another one, you're going to move to them, right? So I think that's associations can work in the same way, is to create that real interest and buzz, and almost making sure you're an inviting organization and group to have people join you rather than forcing these collaborations as we all kind of want to do.
Yeah, I've done in the past. Sure. So what do you think is the most important thing that association leaders can be doing right now to position their organization for success over the next year or so?
Well, I think, I know we like to use the word change management. It's been a good buzzword too for a while. And I'm not sure that we're going through change management as much as we're going through emotional and cultural management. Organizations, have been emotionally invested for years, decades, and some for hundreds of years, right, on the way they've been doing things. And yes, things have evolved and may have done them differently, but their emotion behind why they existed and what they're doing has always been there. Their cultures may have adjusted a bit, but we all come with strong cultures. And I think there's a little bit of a sense of fear and panic about, are we going to be able to accomplish that mission and that vision or that culture, or do we have the existence, or will we be in existence anymore? And I think it's going to really be important for CEOs and other senior leaders in the organization from a staff perspective to demonstrate that calm in these kind of turbulent times, right? There's a little bit of uncertainty. You got to be flexible. You may have to make decisions quicker. It may not be with all the information and data you may want, but time is almost going to be the enemy if you don't move quick enough and kind of jump on opportunities, or at least take a calculated risk on some of these things. And I think demonstrating your confidence in some of those decisions and helping your organization move in those directions is probably going to be the most critical thing that you can do from a leadership perspective and a staffing perspective right now.
Well, thanks for saying that, Paul. I think that's some great thoughts. I know that over the years I've seen, even prior to the pandemic, you be able to lead an organization to take some risks that have really had a great growth outcome for those organizations. And then I've seen other CEOs that have just said, okay, we're going to continue to do the same thing. Our members are happy, and, I don't want to rock the boat. But then the pandemic hits, and it was a, oh no moment, because there wasn't other service lines or product offerings and things like that when a meeting, a live meeting wasn't available. So, and those organizations are still in major recovery mode, today because of it. So I guess, my thoughts, and I know that you've always looked at the association business model as kind of an evolving model, and, have taken opportunities to make some changes. But how do you see kind of the association business model changing in the future?
I think, we've talked about this for a number of years, and I know that some of these associations are probably financially struggling. I've already heard that there's been some mergers, and I don't know if this environment forced those as much as it probably sped them up.
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of the kick the can down the road. I think there are a number of associations that we all affectionately call our competitor sister societies, right? We try to use the right term or the nice term. And I think what's going to happen is, I think everybody's going to have to understand that if you think you can do everything for everybody, that's not going to exist anymore, right? So how can you let go of something you're doing because maybe you don't do it the best, and let the other group do it because maybe they do it better, and then that other group lets go of something they don't do that's duplicative of what you do, but you do it better than anybody. And I think that's the courage it's going to take a lot of associations to embrace in a way, because I don't see the current structure and modeling around, well, our members expect us to do X, Y, and Z. Well, they can get X, Y, and Z by somebody else, and if they're doing it better, at some point they're not going to belong to both organizations, right?
Right.
You would want them to belong to one or participate in one because they get this from it, and belong and participate to the other one because they get something different for what their needs are. So I think that's really where things are going to be heading, and unfortunately the economics of the whole pandemic and the new environment we're going to be heading into are probably in a way going to force a lot of those discussions. I know that we may probably end up having those discussions with some of our sister groups, right? They all have had to make, fortunately, we haven't had to make that decision during the pandemic. We did not cut services. We did not lay off staff. We were fortunate, and I think that's a credit to our board that they made that hard decision to stay invested with the staff and the direction. But others were not so fortunate and lucky, and they had to cut out what I call business lines that were probably very critical and strategic to who they were as an organization. So it's going to be hard jumping those things back, because some of them are very big operations, and they're probably going to have to take serious looks at, do we really get back into that, right? Or do we let that go and let somebody else who may be doing it better? Or is there a way for us to do it together, right? And that where some of the collaborations really happen is because the business modeling makes sense, both from an expense and a revenue side. Then it is about, well, let's create something, because that I never, I'm sure you can find % of those things that work, but I'll guarantee you there's about 90% that nobody's been satisfied with when they happen.
Yeah, it's been, as a consultant in the industry, I get to see a lot of different organizations and how they're being led. So it's been very interesting. I was talking with Ken Slaw on our podcast last week. He's the executive director for the Society for Vascular Surgeons. I believe you know him.
Right.
And he said that was really important, that they invested in staff and kept the staff because of just what you were saying. And I told him that I've seen associations now that had gotten rid of departments, business lines, And because of just the craziness in staffing right now, they're not able to fill those positions. So, and some of the even outsourcing opportunities, some of those companies are too busy. So they're really even more so behind the eight ball now. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how some of this plays out. But, to your point, I think that the collaboration for some of those groups may just be necessary because they're not going to be able to continue to do everything they've done before and maintain their value for their constituents and their membership base.
No, I think that's, and that's a good point. And quite honestly, I think it's gonna help an organization. I think they're going to see greater benefit because now they're going to really be focused in on a fewer things that are probably even more critical, right? You've not spread out your resources and your efforts. You've really gotten to focus in on the things that you have left. And people may see that that is really where their core niche and direction should really be. And that might become their new norm. They may never, ever go back to some of that stuff, or they may never even partner with it. They may point
Yeah.
their members or customers in different directions for different things because that's what you're going to have to do. But I think there's going to be a real good shift. And I just, it's interesting. I just heard the term today about this is a resignation era for staffing, especially in the association world, because of just all these dynamics of either people getting laid off or people who are worried that that still may happen to them in their specific organization. And for some of us who have new vacancies because we created new positions, we're kind of reaping the benefit. We're seeing a lot of talent out there, whether they have positions and they're looking or they just, were released because of the poor economic or the tough decisions that other organizations had to make. So, I guess some of us are going to reap some of the benefits, but at least I look at it as keeping some, best we can, some of the good people still in the association world, because it is kind of a niche job. It is, really passion and mission driven. And sometimes it's hard to find those people. And so when you do, you try to keep them and make sure
Yeah.
they're continuing to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Paul, we've worked with you to kind of help with at least two organizations with what I would call an overall digital transformation, having either legacy systems or no systems, starting with Excel spreadsheets, and you've really kind of led that kind of vision for both AACE and prior when you were at Chest. And I'm just curious about, what your thinking is on, technology continuing to change how associations operate and evolve.
So I think it's going to be as important, if not more important. And I think the real challenge, though, with all this is, I think the virtual move to the virtual world so abruptly demonstrated that. I mean, there were so many companies and products out there that had to evolve and change. And from an association perspective, there was some concern, like, were they ready to do that? Could they do that? What was their experience? Did somebody else try them out? What was the pros? What was the cons? We're all worried about our customer experience. So I think that is really going to be the greatest challenge. So I think from an association perspective, I think we're always going to be evolving and always looking for the better product. I don't think this is going to be, oh, we're really happy here, so we'll sit here for 3 to 5 years. I think the environment is going to push us into, making sure we always have the best product. And I think on the other side, these companies that are producing these products and these platforms, man, they're gonna have to be on it. There's no longer the given that, oh, we've been good for 10 years and we've got the reputation, because they're going to have to evolve and they're going to have to stay on top of things and produce a good product, because organizations are going to come and go. We're gonna get into certain platforms and products and then find out they're not working or they're not holding up their end of the bargain, and we're just going to move on. And that's going to be the expectation. It's going to happen quick. So I think from a staffing perspective, we've always viewed those technology-driven staff as critical. I hate to say this because they're going to hold leverage on us, but they're even going to be more critical than they've been.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, and I think it was very hard for those folks that were in meetings to adapt, because they were always doing physical meetings, and some of them have. But I think the other thing that association leaders have learned is that all your staff really have to have a technology aptitude, right? Because you may have to jump in and do something, or you may have to really understand what is that user experience and how do we work with a vendor to fix something, because you may not have the technology staff internally. The other thing I was thinking about as you were talking to Paul was, you guys, right before the pandemic, you had implemented a new LMS, and as you were talking about your partner on that product, there were two things that I saw from the outside that was happening. Was one, you guys had tools that you could hurry up and implement online learning, right? So I saw a lot of things. The agility that your team was able to, really turn those things around, and to provide an opportunity for a revenue stream. But also, and we know, the technology vendor, they've also evolved, right? They've evolved with you, and we've also seen them evolve with other associations. So as you said, we've worked with those technology partners in the past. So it's like, here's our product, here's what it does, great, I hope you like it, and kind of that's it, right? But really and it's really hard to find those partners that's going to continue to grow with you and evolve and want to not only service you from what they have today, but grow with you for the future. I think that is a really good point, and I think is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be critical that, even groups like yours, Sherry, with orgSource and that, and some of those partners that you can bring to the table, the more they hear from us in a group, the better off they're going to be to try to meet the needs that are going to be evolving on a regular basis, right? Otherwise, it's going to be each of us one-offing, talking to groups, and that's going to be the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. So any final thoughts today, Paul, before I let you go and get back to your busy day?
No, but I think my last message would be, this is the time to be brave. This is the time to invest. And that's our job. And I always saw that as our job, is to make sure organizations are thinking progressively. Thinking defensively is, unfortunately, right now going to probably head you down the wrong road here. And maybe a road that either you're not going to recover from, or the person behind you is never going to be able to, get going for the organization. So I think we have a great opportunity, to really set a new course, and almost use the pandemic as that right reason or excuse to do it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us today, Paul. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can talk with you again, maybe in the fall, and follow up and see what you guys are doing next.
Good. I'd be happy to do it.
All right. Great.
Have a great day.
You too.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. orgSource specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.